So let's move on to the amp and the port, because we teased the amp a little bit earlier. Can you tell me about those two specifically? Because they're some of my favorite, honestly, my favorite parts of the Sonos landscape.
Yep. And funny you said landscape, because we can get to that in a second. So imagine this, right? You've got speakers that you love the sound of, whether they're bookshelf speakers and most of the time it's an outdoor speaker of some sort, right?
Yep.
But you have those and you want to get Sonos to work with them. Enter the Sonos amp, formerly Connect amp, formerly ZP100.
Yep.
It is the Sonos amp is 125 watt per channel, 2-channel stereo amplifier with Sonos built into the system. So it natively connects to the Sonos app. You connect it via speaker wire to those speakers, and now, boom, you've got Sonos music playing through those speakers. Outdoor speakers are what we use it for a lot. You don't see a lot of people using bookshelf speakers as much as I would. I mean, my mom does at her house, but it does because I designed it, right? Most of the time, it's usually a pair of outdoor speakers, Bowers and Wilkins, DefTech, something like that. But recently, last week we had Sonance on, and there's a 6-channel option package that we sell with them that has 6 landscape speakers and a sub powered off of the Sonos amp for landscape audio. Now, it's not going to cover an Olympic-sized swimming pool, but if you've got a small patio or a smaller pool, it's really, really awesome, and it's pretty inexpensive compared to the next tier up from them. So, so that's the Sonos amp.
I love it. Well, and honestly, so I said it's my favorite. It's a fantastic Swiss Army knife of a device, and so I'll just give you a couple of things that are, in my opinion, incredibly important as a designer. So the first one is that it's about 9 by 9 inches, and I want to say maybe like 2.5 tall, something like that. So from a physical standpoint, it's actually very small. Most amplifiers are built into an AV receiver. Well, that's a rack piece of gear. That's 20 inches wide by 18 to 20 inches deep by 8 inches tall. So, you talk about looking at things from a design perspective. You say, I don't want to have this big, ugly box, right? That's half the reason why we throw them into these other rooms. We put them in a rack. We put it in a cabinet. We put it in a... Well, you take a look at a Sonos amp, and we've been doing a ton of these recently. You can run speaker wire and an in-wall or in-ceiling pair of speakers or a passive soundbar, and that's actually the one is probably my favorite, quite frankly. You can run those right behind the television. You put in this low-voltage back box, and the Sonos amp can live behind the TV. And so now you've got this ability to hide an amplifier, and you can get whatever speaker you want, to your point, right? Maybe I do want bookshelves. Maybe I want a set of towers. Maybe I want some electrostats. True story. I had a guy. Okay? And, oh, man, it's going to be... All right, so electrostatic speakers from Martin Logan, okay, they make phenomenal, and they're not inexpensive, by the way, but they sound fantastic, and this guy really, really, really wanted some electrostatic speakers, but he already had Sonos. He loves Sonos, and he said, listen, man, I want this ease and compatibility. And so we get out to the house and we're looking at it and we go through the design, and you know what? At the end of the day, we had this beautiful wall that was left of the fireplace, and we put an electrostatic speaker on one side and the same thing on the other. The wires went behind the television, so you didn't see any cords, you didn't see any wires, and we were able to get the Sonos amp behind the TV. So it really did look like these floating speakers, floating television, and we had all of the integration with the Sonos system. and the TV was super easy to operate. He did nothing but stream. So, he turns on the TV, amp turns on, speakers play fantastically. And could I have recommended a nicer amplifier and all this other kind of stuff? Sure. I probably could have. But in the end, it was actually the right move. And it sounded pretty dang good.
Yep.
It sounded great. So I really do think it's probably one of my favorite pieces. But let's say that you had a receiver. Let's say you've got an Atmos surround sound room, like a theater room or a bonus room or something, but you want to be able to play music up there. Mark, what piece would I use for that?
Well, Dan, you would utilize the Sonos. I'm kidding. Sonos Port.
Sonos Port.
Formerly the Sonos Connect. And that essentially is the same device as the Sonos Amp, just minus the amplification part. So you can connect it via analog or digital coax to any amplifier that you want, whether that's a surround sound or an existing 2-channel integrated or 2-channel amp, and that allows you to utilize your amplifier and speakers with that system. The other difference between the port and the amp is the amp does have that HDMI connection like the soundbar. So when we were talking about playing TV sound, you can connect TV HDMI to that. The port does not have that. It is strictly designed as a audio device, for music and for Sonos audio, and we'll get to that in a second. And it also has an input, an analog input, which the Sonos amp does too, allowing you to plug in another audio source like a turntable or CD player or something else to distribute that throughout the Sonos system, which is something we've kind of skipped over and we'll talk about at some point here. But that's what the port essentially is designed for.
Well, and I'm glad that you corrected me, because it really isn't just music. You are correct. I like to think about them in a music context, probably because I use them for distributed audio so much. If I have a house we go out to and they already have a traditional in-wall, in-ceiling speakers, have already, volume controls on the wall, we're already, have an existing system we want to build some new technology on top of, the Sonos Port becomes a really nice solution. You can get one of those to represent each room or zone, depending on how you break it out, in the home. And so, in conjunction with a distributed audio amplifier, 8-zone amp or a 16-channel amp or a 4-channel amp or something like that, you've got the Sonos brain power, so to speak, to be able to feed into that system. So, and you mentioned that you could connect a turntable. So could you tell me maybe the 2 ways that you connect turntables into the Sonos ecosystem?
Sure. So the most common way that we've done it for the past several years is utilizing an input on a Sonos device, whether that be the port, the amp, or a 5. The Sonos 5 actually has an analog input on the back of it.
Yep.
So you could connect a CD player or turntable into this unit. If it's a turntable, it does require a outboard phono stage in between your turntable and Sonos if your turntable doesn't have it built in already.
Yep, I was going to say.
So, but most of the time, folks have a turntable that have a phono preamp built in, so you would connect from your turntable into the back of the port on the audio input, and that would allow you to then, it would show up on the Sonos app as a line in. It doesn't show up until you plug something in.
Yep.
You name it turntable, and boom, you're playing your music. You start your turntable. You can then play that to any Sonos device, whether that be the soundbar or one of their speakers. Recently, this is something that I learned just a few weeks ago, honestly, because things change so much. We actually carry a few options that wirelessly connect to the Sonos network. It is not made by Sonos. The one that I actually saw and integrated was Victrola.
Yep.
And it was like a $700 turntable. So it's not, It's not the $200 Audio Technica.
Right.
But if you don't want the hassle of having to have a port or spend $450 on a port when you don't need it, you buy this unit and it shows up as a wireless source into your Sonos ecosystem. So I was actually really excited about it. Like, I was tempted to purchase one to try it out myself. I didn't do that, but
that's fair.
I might do it at some point. We'll see. I haven't got to listen to records a lot recently, so I've kind of wanted to try to get back into it. So,
well, and I think there's something to be said for, and speaking as audio engineer and tech guy, I'm thinking about a turntable as that fully mechanical, uncompressed audio process, right? And so there's a part of me that says, man, why are you hooking that up to a wireless digital system? Like, that doesn't make any sense, in it from a technology perspective. And yet at the same time, if it gets you listening to music and it enables you to enjoy your music and have that connection with an artist or with a song that you love and to have a good time with family and friends, then who cares, man? Like, what are we arguing about? I mean, the point of technology is for you to do the thing, right? It's a tool. It gets you from A to B. Like, that's what we care about. So if that's your ecosystem is Sonos and you want to have a turntable, then go for it, man. And don't think twice about it. Just make sure it works. Make sure you have a phono stage. Make sure that phono preamp is built in, or get the Victrola and rock. Like, have a great time.
Yep. And Dan and I, we probably should preface this, like, you and I both own nice turntables on our main system. You know what I mean? So
yes,
we're not here to tell you that we're throwing it all out today and getting Sonos, and that hopefully that's not an overarching thing. It's all about what it does and the price point that it's at, right?
Yep.
So don't want it to overshadow the fact that it is, there are better sounding options, and especially when it comes to turntables. If you're the stereo person, Sonos is probably an accessory, an auxiliary to your system. It's not, you're not running your $1,500 Project turntable or your Macintosh MT5 through it. You're just not.
Yep. Well, and I'll tell you a story. I had a guy who works in the music industry as a client, and we built a listening room, okay? And we had a really cool Yamaha integrated amplifier and a fantastic Rega turntable, and we did beautiful KEF tower speakers and, KF92 subwoofer. I mean, everything was all analog. And we ended up using a Sonos port as one of the options, right? And I say this to say, you can have your cake and eat it too. Like, that's the whole point. When you get into this room, and we did some cool things with like acoustic panels and stuff like that, but when you get in there, the whole point is to listen to music, right? And so if I want to have that ability, then I should be able to flip a switch and do the thing, right? And that's the thing I think I most appreciate about Sonos as an ecosystem and as a whole brand, as a company, as an ethos. They really understand that it's about getting you to your music, and don't let the technology get in the way. And I can't agree with that anymore. As much as I understand there's parts and pieces, they do certain things. At the end of the day, they really do understand. Let's get you back to the music. Let's get you to your TV. Let's get you to your movies. Let's get you into what makes what sense for you.